Welcome back, everybody. This is Peter Schiff here at SchiffRadio.com. Hour 2 is underway, and apparently we're still waiting on our guest, Laurence Kotlikoff, to join the show. Maybe I'll start introducing him because he's got quite a lengthy resume, so maybe it'll take me a little time, and maybe by the time I finish, we will have gotten him on the line. Anyway, he is a professor of economics at Boston University. He also is a research associate for the National Bureau of Economic Research. He's an author of the book Jimmy Stewart is Dead, Ending the World's Ongoing Financial Plague with Limited Purpose Banking. That came out in February 2010. He is also a columnist for both Bloomberg and Forbes. He's worked as a consultant to central banks and governments all around the world. I mean, no joke. Major companies. Worked for Italy, Japan, England, Russia, Ukraine, New Zealand. He's worked at the Department of Education, Labor in the U.S. He even was a member of the Council of Economic Advisors in the early years of the Reagan administration back in 1981-82. Most recently, he is throwing his hat in the ring. He is a candidate for president of the United States. He is endeavoring to be the nominee of a third party, the Americans Elect Party. Anyway, Laurence is now on the line. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I just want to point out one thing. I was just a junior. I was a senior economist, one of 10. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. The fact that I work for the president, President Reagan, doesn't make me a Republican. I actually voted for Carter that year, so. I mean, when Carter Reagan was up for.
All right.
Election,
Well,
you know.
When I promoted you, I kind of described you as such. I said you wanted to, challenge Obama from the left. That maybe that you wanted to out Keynesian him. But so if you're serious about being president, why go third party? It's a difficult road. Why not challenge Obama? In the Democratic primary.
Well, I'm challenging both of these candidates. I take it's going to be Romney and Obama. I think that the political parties have made a mess of the economy in the country. They've squandered all kinds of resources in wars that have no real purpose, and nation building that anybody with any common sense would see wasn't going to work. Going back to Vietnam, and it's not that I'm a pacifist. It's just that.
Yeah, but do you think? But my point is, why not challenge Obama though? Why not try to make this argument and bring it to the Democrats and see if you can? Because don't you think you might have a better shot if you can become the? Although it's pretty hard to knock out an incumbent president in his own party, but you might get more media that way. I
think I'm going to have a very good shot if I expect to win the nomination of the Americans Elect Party, and what I'm running against is both parties. I'm not running against one party.
Well, what is the platform? I'm not that familiar with the Americans Elect. I mean, what's their actual platform, and how do they differ?
They're not actually a party per se. They're kind of a platform for choosing someone who can bring the country together and who is independent or willing to confront the two parties. They're just a mechanism for a third-party candidate to be on the ballot, because they're going to be in the ballot in all 50 states. They're spending, plus D.C., they're spending $30 million at this. I'm not really associated with the organization. I'm just taking advantage of it, and I'm sure some other candidates will as well. But
all right.
You, like most Americans, must be totally fed up with this political system. You must agree.
No doubt, and I will agree with you on the wars and the fallacy of the wars. So let's not even go there for now, because your background is in economics. I'd like to talk about economics. I mean, what do you think the Republicans and Democrats are doing wrong as far as their approach to the economy, and how would your approach be different?
Well, first of all, we have to face the fact that the country has got massive unemployment and underemployment, and it's for a simple reason, really. We have a coordination failure. Employers aren't hiring because they think nobody else is hiring, so we need to have a president who doesn't necessarily spend more money to try and bribe companies to hire, but uses the bully pulpit to get, let's say, the top 1,000 CEOs together and says, look, if you guys all hire collectively in unison simultaneously, you will actually find you've got more customers. This will justify your hiring. If we have to realize that starting in when Lehman Brothers collapsed in 2008 in September, that all the firms, big and small around the country, collectively, in a coordinated manner, really started laying off people in droves. There were 700,000 people being laid off in January, for example, by all these companies around the country. Why did they do that? Why did they decide overnight we're all going to lay off? Because they thought everybody else was going to lay off. So I want to turn that around.
Well, I would argue that that's not the reason. I think what happened was a lot of products were being bought by people who really couldn't afford them because they were leveraging up their homes. You had a lot of phony demand coming from the housing bubble.
That doesn't make any sense because, look, it happened from one minute to the next. If everybody had laid off, if we had laid off 5 million people on one day, you would realize that was a ridiculous argument. And it is a ridiculous argument because what happened was.
Well, I think it makes more sense than yours. Your point is that the reason that we had a recession is because everybody just decided to fire people, and if we all just hire people, then everything is going to get better. If we all just decide to hire.
If people expect bad times, they will make that happen, and that's what when you had the President of the United States saying. The sky is going to fall, and when you had the Treasury Secretary bending on his knees and begging Pelosi because the next Great Depression was going to arrive, when you had McCain canceling his election bid in order to save the country, when you had Obama talking about the Great Depression, when you had all the politicians talking the country into bad times, that had a huge effect. Is your point then that we don't have any real serious structural problems in the U.S. economy, that we simply worried ourselves into a recession and it was just all irrational fear? And if we can somehow just start hiring people, that we will find out we have no problems? If everybody hires, if everybody hires in a coordinated fashion, we will find that there's more demand. And this is not something that's my theory, okay? This goes back to Keynes' animal spirits. How do you coordinate the hiring? Let me just explain something. There's a vast literature of macroeconomics that you haven't heard about, but we economists do talk about, which is about coordination failures. So there's no auctioneer to clear markets, okay? You've got to realize that our textbook story about how markets clear and how the invisible hand equates demand and supply doesn't work when you don't have an auctioneer.
But how do you coordinate the hiring?
I would take the top 1,000 CEOs, and I'd say, look, I put them in a big room, and I would talk to them. I would explain to them that they need to hire 5% more each company. I certainly wouldn't coerce them. I wouldn't lock the doors. I wouldn't subsidize them. I would appeal to the.
All right. Well, let's pick up. I want to address that particular strategy when we get back. We got a quick commercial. We'll be right back to discuss that plan to create jobs using the bully pulpit. We'll be right back. And this is Peter Schiff speaking with presidential hopeful Laurence Kotlikoff, who is going to be seeking the nomination of the third party Americans elect. He's got a website, Kotlikoff2012.org, if you want to get more information. Now, before the break, Laurence mentioned that what he really wants to do is, as president, is get 1,000 CEOs in a room and make a strong case, I guess, not the force of law, but try to get these people to hire more people, even if maybe they don't want to. And from my perspective, Laurence, businesses want to make a profit. I mean, that's why they're there. And if they thought that hiring people would generate a profit, they'd do it. And so if they're not hiring people, let me finish my point. Let me finish my point, and then I'm going to ask you a question. So if they're not hiring people, it's either because they think it will diminish those profits or generate losses. So if they hire people anyway because you tell them to, and they make a decision that they think is not a good business decision, and they start losing money as a result, not only might they have to fire the people they just hired, but they might have to start firing people that used to have jobs, but now they can't afford to keep them because they lost money hiring people that they didn't need. So how would you respond to that?
You're missing a basic point, which is it's one thing to hire somebody by yourself, or people by yourself, and nobody else is hiring because you're not going to get any more customers. But if everybody's hiring in unison together at the same time, that's different. That's coordinated hiring, just like we had coordinated firing, and you can't argue differently because the numbers are right there. We had massive coordinated firing, and we need a massive coordinated hiring, and then the companies will make.
So it's kind of like Kevin Costner. It's kind of like the Field of Dreams, right? If we hire, recovery will come.
Peter, this is not complete, pie in the sky speculation. The Germans did this.
It's not?
No, it's not, because if you look at what happened in Germany, if you look at what happened in the U.S., how did we get out of the Great Depression? We had the government itself coordinate both supply and demand. They hired people, and they also demanded the products.
No. Well, that's your opinion about how we got out. I think we got into the Great Depression because we had too much government.
It's not.
But if what you're saying is true, well, can every country that has high unemployment just do that? I mean, is it all just a function of an irrational fear of hiring, and that every country that has high unemployment, all you have to do is have the president tell everybody to hire, and then all of a sudden there's going to be prosperity and demand? Is that how it works?
This is a massive coordination failure, and yes, if you're in a situation where everybody's sitting on their hands because they think everybody else is sitting on their hands, you need to get everybody collectively to get off their hands. Now, that doesn't require...
But what are we going to hire them to do? Does it matter what the people do? I mean, if half the people are hired to fill ditches, to dig ditches, and half are hired to fill them, is that okay with you? Does it matter what the people do?
They're going to produce the goods that these companies are producing. And because when we're talking about 29 million Americans who are now unemployed or underemployed, 29 million Americans, if they have jobs and they have salaries, they're going to be bringing demand to the market. You've got to understand.
But a lot of these jobs produce nothing. I mean, a lot of the jobs are producing nothing. If we hire a bunch of service sector people, if department stores go run out and hire more people to man the cash registers, how does that help the economy? How does that produce anything?
Well, these people get paid, and then they would go buy goods and services from other companies who are manning. Buy more goods from China, run up the trade deficit. How does that help the economy? Well, the international issue is important. It's a decent response, but that's where you have to try and coordinate the same kind of response by other countries. So your idea that somehow this is the way the market should work, that we have 29 million people in this situation where we didn't have that in 2007. You've got to realize, you may think capitalism is perfect, but Peter, you've got to realize it's not working. Okay, there's something wrong, and it's not because we've got a socialist in Congress, in the White House, or we've got some terrific savior on the right coming. There's a problem where the market's not working. And it's because there's a problem in that we don't have capitalism, and what you're trying to do is you're trying to say that we need central government planning. No, I'm not talking about planning. I'm talking about you've got to realize. Well, what is the difference between planning and coordinating? You think the government should coordinate hiring for all these companies? I mean, how is that not a central authority coming in and trying to micromanage the economy instead of allowing the market to function? The market's not functioning, Peter. Because the government won't let it. If you had no job, if you yourself had no job and your kids have no job, or you can't get enough work, you'd understand the market's not functioning. 29 million people in this country realize the market's not functioning. You've got a job, and you're happy as a clam. But a lot of people. Well, actually, I don't have a job. Really functioning. I don't have a job. Nobody employs me. I create jobs. I employ people. I do not have a job. Right, I'm working for myself, and of course everybody has that opportunity. But I can tell you what, I'm very glad you can do that, and but not everybody. But I would hire a lot more people. I can tell you firsthand, Laurence, I am not hiring people because of government. Government regulations prohibit me from hiring people all the time. I would hire hundreds more people if the government would let me, if the regulators would get out of my way, and I think that's the problem in this economy. Okay, I think I've got a small business. I think government regulation is a problem, and that's something I would try and focus on as a president as well. So I'm not saying this is the only problem that we're facing, this coordination failure. There are other things that need to be fixed. There's a whole slew of things that have to be fixed. They're all discussed on Kotlikoff's 2012.org. If you look at that website, you'll see it's not far left, far right. It's right down the middle, but there's very significant different proposals out there for fixing the country. The country is not working. The country is broke. Social Security's broke. The healthcare system is broke. The tax system is a disgrace. We've got a financial system poised to recollapse, and it's taken us down.
I agree with all that. But
so look at what I'm proposing, and do it with an open mind. Stop the ideology. Stop the right versus the left. That's not the real situation. A large part of what's going on here for the last 6 decades is a war of the old people against the young people through a Ponzi scheme that has systematically.
I agree, 100%. Social Security is a Ponzi scheme, and I agree with you. But let's talk about the real issues. If the country is broke, you say we're broke. Well, how can encouraging more spending help us? If we're really broke because we borrowed and spent too much money, why would you want to encourage more of that activity?
I'm not, because I haven't actually said anything about encouraging more spending. I've said.
Well, yes, you want people to go spend money. You just said we need people to have jobs so they can go spend money. The point should be we have to save money. We have to produce stuff. We don't want to spend money. We're broke.
We need people to look, Peter. I said people when you make money at a job that you don't otherwise have, you can both save some and spend some. When you have no money, you can't do anything. Now, if we save more, we're actually saving absolutely nothing. I agree 100%. And I'm the only one who's really writing about the national saving rate being actually zero. It's 0.1% last year.
Mm-hmm.
The best, and the investment rate is 4.4%, almost a post-war low. Now, Peter, we can have people earn money, save it, and then it gets invested, and then that.
Right, but we have to have them earning money productively, Lawrence. Yes. We need productive employment, and if everybody just hires more people to be non-productive, it just exacerbates the imbalances. We have to allow the country to restructure economically so we can generate viable jobs,
Peter,
not just more of the same phony jobs we've got now.
I'm not talking about people being non-productive. I'm talking about hiring people to be productive, to produce the goods and services. But you've got to understand that when 29 million people get more pay than nothing, or more than they're currently earning, they're going to actually bring demand to the market. And they may be bring demand for investment goods and services as well as consumption goods and services. So I'm absolutely with you 100%. We need to save.
But my point, though, is a lot of the Fortune 500 companies that you want to hire more people, I think should be firing people. I think we have too many people working for some companies where they shouldn't be. I think labor is misallocated. We have too many people working in services, too many people working in finance, in healthcare, in retail, and not enough people working in goods production. And the market has to be allowed to reallocate that. Simply forcing more employees into sectors that are already, over-allocated resources is just going to screw up the economy even more.
Well, you're absolutely right. We can't have the government micromanage the allocation of labor, but we do have to realize that the markets don't work perfectly, okay? This situation is a market failure, just like certain markets in health insurance. Why do we have 50 million people that have no?
Yeah, we're running out of time. I agree. The market is failing, but it's because of all the government interference and all the government regulations. That's the root cause of the market failure, not an inherent failure of capitalism.
Look,
I don't know. Hey, I like the discussion. If you could hold on, I'll keep you on until the next break if you want to talk more. It's an interesting conversation. You're an interesting guest, so if you have time, hold on. Otherwise, we'll be back with your calls here on the Peter Schiff Show. This is Peter Schiff here at Schiff Radio, still talking with presidential hopeful Laurence Kotlikoff about the U.S. economy. And first, Lawrence, I want to agree with you again that the economy is not functioning properly. The markets are not functioning properly. We have a lot of misallocations and distortions. And I think that the reason for that is government intervention, that the regulations, the taxes, the subsidies, the central banking, the artificially low interest rates are inhibiting free market forces from working properly. That's why you have all this unemployment. That's why you have all the misallocations. And that if we want the benefits of capitalism, we have to re-embrace it.
Let me respond. You had me on. I'm a professional economist. I'm not a professional politician, so please listen, okay? Don't talk over me. Let me just tell you. If you go back to 2000, I'm not disagreeing that the government deregulation is restricting employment and a big problem, and the tax system is screwed up. that we have lots of things that need to be fixed. But if you go back to 2006, 2007, we had full employment. We had pretty much the same set of regulations that stymie small businesses like mine and yours from hiring, and we still had full employment. So something different happened here. So I'm not disagreeing and differing with you on some of the things you're saying, but you can't lay everything on the feet of the government, okay? It's not, or the head of the government. It's not just the government that screwed up this economy. There's something in the private sector market that's not working, and it's a coordination failure. And it's because people, that are employers, realize that if nobody else is hiring, they're not going to have demand to justify hiring themselves. So we can.
Well, but how could you overlook this one important thing? Because if you remember, a lot of those jobs that we were creating in 2004, 5, 6 were a function of phony demand coming from a housing bubble, where people were employed in the housing sector, building houses, remodeling houses, where homeowners were extracting equity to go on shopping sprees, to buy cars, to take vacations. We had all sorts of economic activity that was phony, and people got jobs they never should have had because the demand wasn't really there. And when that housing bubble burst, and when we realized all the mistakes that we had made and all those phony jobs that never should have been created evaporated, and we exposed the fallacies and the misallocations that were the result of this debt-financed housing bubble. Those jobs had to disappear because they never should have been created in the first place.
Peter,
and we needed to put those people to more productive employment producing stuff. That has to happen.
Peter, you're saying some very important truths, and I'm not disagreeing with you. Just said some very important things, and which I agree with. There was a lot of misallocation, and when you start giving people liar loans at very low rates who can't afford it. But we don't know, even to this day, what fraction of the homeowners, the home purchasers, were really, going far beyond their means in terms of buying homes. We do know that house prices went up, and we've seen other asset prices go up. It's not clear that those house prices were completely unsustainable. The economy slipped from one equilibrium to another. And
clearly they were unsustainable, but it's not, Laurence, it's not just the buying. It's what about all the home equity loans? Remember, back in that period of time, everybody kept borrowing money against their homes and then spending it as if they had earned it.
Let me give you a fact, okay? The national saving rate is now 0. If you ask, your suggestion here is it's all the young people and middle-aged people just leveraging their homes to buy cars and VCRs, whatever that, or iPhones, whatever it was, and a huge spending spree. If you really look at the data, what's really going on is that it's the consumption of the older people that's going up dramatically, just absolutely amazingly compared to that of younger people. A lot of that consumption is health care that's paid for by the government directly in the form of Medicare and Medicaid. So the big problem with national spending is not really young people that leverage their homes in order to go buy stuff they couldn't afford. I mean, I'm sure there's lots of households who did that, but it's not the major story behind the national saving rate going down the tubes. The national saving rate has been going down the tubes for decades, since the 50s, okay?
Yes, and that is a big problem.
It's now 0, okay? And that's, if you look at the data, it's the consumption of the elderly every decade, one after the other, has gone up dramatically relative to the younger people. Now, I've got an op-ed on
and I agree. Now, are you in favor of abolishing, getting rid of Social Security, means testing it, having some way of unraveling this Ponzi scheme?
Yes,
is that part of your platform?
Here's what I would do, and it's quite different from what Newt Gingrich would do or the president would do. What I would do with Social Security is I would freeze it in place, the current system, pay off all the accrued benefits so retirees wouldn't be hurt. Everybody else who's worker would get their accrued benefits when they retire. They'd have zeros filled in their earnings record. Then I would set up an individualized account where people contribute a mandatory 8%. The contribution is split between spouses. The government makes a progressive match like some other presidents have proposed, and some presidents have proposed on other. And in addition, all the assets would be invested in a single market-weighted index fund, a global market-weighted index fund by a computer, so that Wall Street doesn't make any money.
But wait a minute. we're broke. Where is the government going to get the money to pay off all the accrued benefits? I mean, the unfunded liability is something like $50 trillion.
For how to fix taxes. It's called the Purple Tax Plan. Purple because it's red Republican, blue Democrats can both agree to this purple solution. And if you have time, I'll tell you about that. It's a very simple plan. I get rid of the federal income tax. I get rid of the federal corporate income tax. I get rid of the state and gift tax. I make the payroll tax highly progressive, including running the earned income tax credit through it. I implement a across-the-board consumption tax. It's a sales tax plus a tax on imputed rent on durables, the homes, the consumption services from your homes and yachts and airplanes. And so
well, how high is the payroll tax under your plan?
15. Everything's 15, 15, 15, and there's a 15% progressive inheritance tax. So I've got a progressive. I've in effect got a low rate fair tax, but much broader base than the existing fair tax proposal.
So it's not the 999 plan; it's the 15, 15, 15 plan.
1515, but it's much more progressive than 999. 999 was regressive. Herman Cain had some good instincts, but he didn't have any good economists working for him. So
I don't think there's any tax system that you can devise that would enable us to pay off all the obligations of Social Security, especially if you're going to let the younger people off the hook and let them actually invest in a funded account.
Peter. I'm the guy who developed generational accounting and worked on fiscal gap accounting. I'm the guy who's the economist in the country who's really connected with long-term fiscal analysis. So I understand.
Hey, I'm the guy that called the financial crisis and the housing bubble. I got a pretty good track.
So we got to work together. You're a great economist, and I'm a good one. But you're absolutely right. We have to pay for it. We can't let the spending on health care go at the gazoo the way it is. And we've got to fix Social Security. So by freezing Social Security in place, you pay off the accrued benefits. They're far lower by about $60 trillion in present value than the projected benefits. So we have a $211 trillion fiscal gap right now in the country. If you look at the entire present value of what's projected to be spent, including debt service versus the taxes, it's $211 trillion in the hole. We have to get that down to zero. And what I'm proposing on my website, people can look at it, would get that fiscal gap down to zero and actually make it negative. Because of the tax reform, the health care reform, the Social Security reform, and the financial reform, we haven't even discussed that because that's a very fundamental reform that would make Wall Street safe for Main Street. So maybe we can't do it today.
Yeah, but now what's your position on interest rates? Do you think that the interest rates are artificially low and that they need to go up as part of a solution to our economic problems?
Yeah, I think that the entire financial structure has to be changed, and that the Fed, is in bailout mode because we have a financial system that can't be trusted, and it's completely, the Fed has become our bank, and the Fed is trying to prop up the economy, and what we want is
right. But what do you think the U.S. government? What about the U.S. government though? If interest rates go up and the U.S. government cannot make its interest payments on its debt, would you propose a restructuring, a default? That's what I've been talking about.
No, I would. We can get through this if we fix healthcare fundamentally, if we fix Social Security, if we fix the tax system, if we.
But even if interest rates go up, and the U.S. government is spending $1 trillion a year on interest.
Well, that's going to be an issue. But if we want to make sure that doesn't happen. And the way to make that happen is to make sure that our long-run fiscal policy is solvent. And the way to get
but the debt already exists. If interest rates go up, based on the debt that we already have, servicing that debt is going to be an enormous burden. All the taxes you're talking about, all that money is going to go to paying interest to the Chinese.
We're in an extremely deep hole. That's why it's extremely important that I get elected president, because I can actually fix these problems. The Republicans and Democrats have made a mess, and they're making it worse. And you're absolutely right that we've got a huge official debt, but we have an even much bigger unofficial liabilities to Social Security, health care, and Medicare, Medicaid. We have to fix this. We've got to stop the Ponzi scheme, but we can't throw the old people under the railroad tracks either.
No, that's why my plan is that we
yeah.
turn Social Security into welfare, which is what it is. And if you're really broke and you need the money, then you get it. But if you don't need the money, then, tough. Sell your assets. Live off of, reduce your children's inheritance. But we can't keep shifting money from the young and the poor to the old and the rich.
I think if you look at my website, if you look at my Social Security plan and the other plans, I think you'll like them. I think you.
All right. Well, look, I am going to check out your website, and I'm going to try to learn a little bit more about your perspective, and so we'll all give it a read. And anyway, thanks for coming on. We agree on a lot of things, disagree on others, but we agree on the important things. The country is really screwed up, and both the Democrats and the Republicans have their fingerprints all over this disaster, both the current one and the bigger one that is coming in the next few years. Anyway, we'll be back with a final segment. We'll be taking a few calls, so stick around.